Welcome to the Perfect Place to Put a Practice podcast by Scott McDonald and DrDemographics.com, the best source of demographic, psychographic, and marketing information for professionals.
Hello, this is Scott McDonald of Dr. Demographics. Today we're going to talk about the kiss of death. These are the locations in 2023 that are having real problems, and I want to talk to you about them. I want to tell you the sites that are going to need a little help. They are, in fact, most of the time, places that you do not want to go. So we're going to talk about it, and if you have any questions, please write to us at scott@scottmcdonald.org. Now, these are the places with the kiss of death. These are the places to avoid. Most of the time, they're not places that you think are going to be good for you. But I thought I'd mention some places that are, in fact, not as bad as others. Now, each year about this time, we publish a list of places that are in trouble. The first, the locations that we consider those that we traditionally favored, but right now aren't doing very well. In short, they have slipped in their ratings, and it's true that they may have some challenges in the past for some reason, but for our measurements are doing worse than expected. Now, why are these places doing worse? They're creeping downward in their ratings most of the time. They might be San Francisco, for example, where a large percentage of the population is fleeing. They're getting out of Dodge. Or it might be Chicago, which has violent crime, particularly murders all over this very large community center. And similar are getting the kiss of death designation like San Bernardino, which happens to be the meth capital of America. Well, that's something for you to be proud of, I suppose. But today we are only discussing the places that are getting bad fastest. Now, the truth is, the whole country is suffering at this moment. We know that we are likely to head into a recession within the next 12 months. Foreign trade imbalances are just out of whack right now. Housing market is not doing well either. But our urgent question, if you want to a place that's doing badly, I ask this question: where should you be avoiding right now? And that's the kiss of death. Now, in the next episode, we're going to talk about places that have promise. Now, there are not as many as there are or were last year. Nevertheless, you want to know what places are looking pretty darn good. Now, keep in mind, we're neither looking at the most affluent places or those that are starving when we talk about the middle guys. These are the practice sites that are somehow in the middle. Sure, we know that the biggest cities in America that have really bad problems are run by blue mayors. I'm not trying to be politically correct or incorrect. I'm simply saying it is true. Mayor Adams of New York has set a new standard by making everyone mad at him at one time. Mayor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, who has just entered his office, has some, close competition to Mayor Adams. But it does us little good to focus on cities with the large and divided city councils. This is a common error in large cities. City councils may not like the mayor. Let's concentrate on the cities in which their city leadership can make the most efficient for both bad and for good, mostly bad. Now, to be fair, let's examine the middle guys who seem intent on making up their cities, particularly from the perspective of the small towns, they should be easier to fix. Now, I believe, for instance, that Fresno is one of those towns that should be doing better than it is. We'll see if they get their act together and pull it together. But first, just because a city is small, there's no reason that it is not in working order. Sometimes the best success stories are those that have a smaller population and they have potential, but are not delivering it at this point. That's where we talk about in the next episode, places with promise, serious problems. The kiss of death is Little Rock, Arkansas. It remains right now the most dangerous city between 100,000 and 200,000 people, with a remarkably high violent crime rate. That's Little Rock for you. Little Rock's violent crime rate stayed relatively the same in 2014, and with just 1% drop after a spike of 2013. But it, at the same time, topped the list of bad things happening. Little Rock's murder rate did increase slightly from 18 to 100,000 people in 2013 to 22 per 100,000 in 2014. Now, that's not a long distance in time, but it's showing the wrong direction. And Little Rock is definitely a good example of a city that's not doing the right thing. These are the big issues with Little Rock, and they seem to be expanding exponentially. This is what makes a kiss of death community. But you should know Little Rock is only an example. Many other cities right now are having much worse times. They're showing problems. Now, we are a little disappointed by the changes in Milwaukee, Wisconsin over the recent past. It was terrible, well, cold weather, and a population of just over or above 500,000 and dropping. People are leaving Milwaukee in great numbers. And it does have crime, but it enjoys a favorable cost of living. I want to say by this that there are some places that look bad, but are not as bad as you might think. Homes are affordable in Milwaukee, and that's a good thing. But the tax burden is really high on them, which is a really bad thing. It is a mixed bag of opportunities. And I want you to understand we need to take both into account. What we really don't like are high costs, but one can find jobs in this community, which is good, but it costs a lot. Still, we are concerned about the crime which continues to plague the area, and that's Milwaukee. Now, the third on the hit parade is St. Louis. It's never been a shining city on a hill. The Dred Scott decision was one of the hardest times in any American city. In case you haven't heard or you have forgotten this, the U.S. Supreme Court, which met there in the 1800s, turned a runaway slave back to his master, thus violating his freedom. As far as St. Louis is concerned, things went down from there. Now, obviously, crime continues to be an issue in St. Louis. Rampant homelessness is also an issue, but while the jazz is certainly not, the low wages are not helping. But these are only one thing that that is affecting the area that you need to be aware of. In St. Louis, they're having a major black exodus. That's a population that is mainly made up of blacks who are leaving a city that they have occupied for close to 100 or 200 years. It has nothing to do with whites at all. They have some of the lowest test scores, by the way, in the nation. And because of that, a lot of the schools are dying, and the black population has had enough. Now, we won't try to explain the problem. We're simply saying that, well, it's extending into the university system. So a lot of people who go to school in St. Louis are taken off. We also have to talk about Memphis, Tennessee. It's mostly a success story. Located in the southwest of the state, it's been dubbed a good risk for the South. And that is generally true of all of Tennessee. The whole state has done well. True. But crime, which is high, and poverty, which is very high, is a big problem for Memphis. In spite of affordable housing, some serious challenges and a few opportunities are born. I am not trying to say all of the South is doomed. It's not. I believe Memphis is one of those places that shows promise. We are pleased to see so much growth. Now, this is likely the result of very inexpensive housing in Memphis. College is a bargain thanks to the Tennessee Promise program. But this place is certainly an acquired taste, Memphis, Tennessee. But those long summer nights can be hard to beat. But the kiss of death can be hard to beat as well with a cold drink in your hand. Now, I like Memphis. I like almost all of Tennessee. But there are some ups and some downs in these middle-income population centers. Now, I want to talk about Albuquerque. Albuquerque, New Mexico is usually, by any standard, a good place. With the exception of Washington, D.C., it has more federal employees than anywhere else. There are relatively few cities here, including Las Cruces and Albuquerque, because there's so much empty space everywhere else. The entire state feels a little empty. That's true of the kiss of death locations. These places to live can seem a little pricey, however, but even the affordable places can seem a little pricey. That's not just them. But there is little to no crime in New Mexico. I want you to keep that in mind, because sometimes cities will have two things in common at the same time: a large crime rate, a large employment rate, and you have to mix them together. Let's talk about Anchorage, Alaska. I don't know how many of you have been to Alaska. It's a great place, beautiful, but it's got cold isolation going on. The population is not big, but it does not have much crime. They don't seem to mind their moose and their elk with the long, long nights they endure. Their schools and their universities are very low priced. On the other hand, their cost of living can be very high. After all, there's only so many things you can buy in Alaska. Suicide is a major issue, unlike other states. So is gun ownership. They take it very seriously, and so do they take their alcohol consumption. Now, it's not a place to stay around liquor, but it is certainly not a place to retire. Of all the places we visited, Alaska has the shortest time span of any group that wants to stay around. After a while, short while, people want to leave. And that happens in different states and different cities in America. Only one other state has a shorter longevity. Can you guess what that place is? All right, Hawaii. Hawaii residents, you name the island, they like their privacy. They like being on an island. But keep in mind that you are looking at islands in which to live, and that can create a kiss of death. One may believe that everything is perfect, but it is inexpensive, not so much. Housing is expensive. Taxes are expensive. They burn through money very quickly. The privations can be real, and the isolation can be real as well. And the cost of living can be very real in Hawaii. So while I would say it's generally a good place to go, it definitely has the kiss of death. Now, I mentioned longevity. It's often a race to see who leaves first, the Islander or the Alaskan. Both can be tough to live there. Of all the places that I have visited, Alaska has the shortest time span that people are willing to endure it. Only one other state has a shorter longevity, Alaska, and then Hawaii. Now, in order to get a handle on this and other places, I want you to consider the practice viability report. We can talk about how much money you'll earn. We can talk about how long you are likely to stay there. The marketing report is also excellent, and the state report is new. They talk about the kind of people who are found in each of these areas. If you can visit our website, it would really be a wise idea to go to 800-849-0499. Our job is to give you the answers that you are going to need in order to make your wise decisions on what places you want to practice.